What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Kelly Michelle, and you're here on Act Up, where we focus on staying above crazy thoughts. I don't know if you've ever heard my story, but I come from a place where I was deceived, I was lost, a big part of my adult life, and not because I didn't know which way I should be searching for the truth, but because I did not care to search deep into the truth and was easily led astray. And I started taking in some of the things that were being presented to me and told to me. And basically, it went to my head in a bad way, okay? So here on Act Up, we focus on the positive, we focus on a mindset shift and we know that without God, we can't do anything. But with God, all things are possible if we continue to put Him first. Now, today's episode is going to be a little bit different because we typically talk about topics and we elaborate on these topics. But today, I want to focus on a Bible verse, and I'm going to do this quite often, and we'll get it started today. But just before we get started, if you feel like this episode may help somebody, go ahead and share it, click like, save it, because this episode we're going to be talking about Proverbs 29:25. And this verse says, "The fear of man brings a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord shall be safe." All right, let's get into it, y'all. So, at first glance, this verse may seem like, it's a warning against being too concerned about what other people think, and while that's certainly a part of it, there is much more to unpack here. So, to truly understand this verse, though, we need to ask ourselves, what is the fear of man? So, in this context, it refers to the idea that we often place too much importance on what other people think. We allow their opinions and judgments to guide our decisions and shape our identity. And this can be dangerous. It leads to anxiety, stress, and lack of fulfillment in your life. So, on the other hand, the verse we're talking about today, Proverbs 29:25, it tells us that those who trust in the Lord will be safe. So, this trust in God allows us to go forward without fear and insecurities and to find our identity and purpose in Him. When we trust in God, we are no longer bound by the opinions of others, and we can live our lives with freedom and confidence. So what does this mean for us today? It means that we need to prioritize our relationship with God above everything. That has to be a priority. That's the only way. It's the only way. I wish I would have made Him a priority early on in my life. If we're not careful, we'll be lukewarm the rest of our lives, uh, fitting God in, wiggling Him in, fitting Him in wherever He can fit in, versus making Him a priority in our lives. We need to trust God and seek His guidance so that we can make decisions that align with our values and bring us true fulfillment. We no longer have to live in fear of what others might think because we know that our worth and identity come from God and only God. Hmm. Today's podcast, we're discussing this wisdom that is found in Proverbs 29:25. You're just joining us. The fear of man brings a snare, but those who trust in the Lord are safe. Um, this verse reminds us that there is power uh, in fear if we allow it to be. And it can trap us, it can make us vulnerable to opinions and actions of other people. We feel pressured, just keeping it real, to conform to society's expectations or the expectations of the people around us. And we fear rejection and criticism if we don't fit in. But this fear of man can be dangerous. It can be a dangerous trap and it can lead us to living a fake life. We won't be able to live a fulfilling and authentic life if we don't shift our priority of putting God first. It can prevent us from pursuing our passions, it can prevent us from standing up for what we believe in, and it can prevent us from following our dreams. So, the second half of this verse, though, is a powerful solution to this problem. It reminds us that when we put our trust in God, we are safe from the snares of fear and the opinions of others. When we trust in God, we are free to be ourselves and live according to His purpose in our lives. We got to be careful because now more than ever with technology and social media, the the need to be affirmed online is crazy. The need to track our likes and our comments and responses to whatever we post. It can take you out if you are allowing it to be the primary focus that drives you in your life. Because not only are we in a position where we need to make sure we prioritize God, but we got people who are commenting and who we're looking to affirm us that don't do that and that are not trying to do that. So it's just like it's a battle that can't be won. Cannot. Okay, so how can we apply this wisdom to our daily lives? Hmm. Okay, so here are a few practical ways. Let's start with number one. Identify the areas in which you struggle with fear of man. Is it at your job? Is it in your relationship? Is it, regarding your personal goals? Once you've identified these areas, you need to take some time and reflect on why you feel this fear and how is it holding you back. A lot of our episodes, I say get out a pen and a paper, not necessarily to take notes on what we're talking about here, but to write lists and to jot down some things that we're talking about that relate directly to your life. You're able to search when you start focusing on your thoughts and have it in your mind that you're going to prioritize God in your life. You're able to lay out the roadmap to healing. And that's our goal here because it all starts with your mind and being prepared and knowing what your ultimate goal is. All right, so that was number one. Number two, seek God's guidance and wisdom. Spend time in prayer and reflection, asking God to help you overcome your fears and trust in Him more fully. Seek out wise counsel from others who have faced similar struggles. All right, so that was a big issue for me. I often didn't want anybody to know truly what I was going through. I wanted everything to appear to be going well. And by doing that in my past, I uh, was limited to my own perception of how things should be because I wasn't putting God first. I wasn't seeking God for the answers. I would pray, but that wasn't my final go to for the answers of the problems I was facing, the answers to it. So now we know, though, that if we fully trust in God, when we pray and we submit to Him and truly understand that He is in control, we're able to rest and not do too much in the midst of his answers coming to us, in the midst of him making a way for us to either overcome a situation, whatever the case may be. We pray and we have faith in his resolution versus trying to do it all on our own. And number three is take action. Once you've identified your fears and sought guidance, take steps to overcome them. This may involve stepping outside of your comfort zone, pursuing a new opportunity, or standing up for what you believe in. Okay? So let's remember that the fear of man may be a snare, but when we trust God, we are safe. I hope this verse is encouraging you all because before you start digging deep into the word, you a lot of times take offense to it because you're not ready to receive the beauty in it, so to speak, because this is a clear uh, road map to how we can overcome these things. And you'll be fighting for the rest of your life trying to please people. Okay, because sometimes people approve of it and think positive of it and a lie and say they don't, just to get you in a place of doubt, you know? So we got to just keep in mind that we got to put God first. All right. Um, at its core, this verse is about the dangers of living in fear of what other people think. And again, Proverbs 29:25. The fear of man brings a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord shall be safe. Right? So, again, what we talked about today, we're still talking about how important it is to know that we don't want to be driven by what people think of us because that'll lead us astray. The fear of man can trap us in a cycle of people pleasing and seeking validation from others, leading us completely away from what we want, we know right, we know what is true. It leads us the opposite way of those things. So, this kind of fear can be paralyzing, leaving us feeling trapped and alone. Hmm. But again, when we anchor our trust in God, we can find safety and security in His love and guidance. By trusting in God, we can break free from the snare of fear of man and live a life that's true to our values and our beliefs. So once we recognize that the fear of man is driving our decisions, we got to keep it real. When we recognize that's what's going on, we got to be honest with ourselves and we have to understand that, hey, wait a minute, I've been seeking validation from others instead of following my own convictions of what I've spoken to God about, what I've prayed to God about. Right? And we got to choose to trust God instead. When we feel trapped in fear of man, we can turn to God for guidance and comfort. We don't have to try to change ourselves and, continue to do this and that to get approval um, in vain. By putting trust in God, we can find the courage to live our lives according to His will rather than being swayed by the opinions of others. And then, the last thing I want to talk about is how we need to practice vulnerability and authenticity, y'all. When we're not living in fear of what others think, we can be more open and honest about who we are and what we believe. By embracing vulnerability and authenticity, we can build deeper connections with others and live a more fulfilling life. The other night we were praying as a family, and I've been really trying to uh, open up and bring the real me out. And I want my children to see that so that they can understand that being authentic is more important than appearing to be a way to others. So when I was praying, I mentioned, God forgive me for my sins. And we a lot of times we say that and we're just like vague, we breeze over that, if we even say it at all. But I said I wanted to start calling the things out that I recall, that I struggled with or that I did during the day. And so I was like, God, any type of gossiping I may have done on the phone a day, any type of lying I did, please forgive me for that. I just mentioned those things. So anyway, once we were done praying, my daughter Dior says, she looks at me with the side eye, Mom, who you was gossiping with? I said, Dior, I was talking to God. I don't have to explain to you. She's like, you was gossiping? Mm-mm, you need to stop that. I said, yes, I know. And she's like, who you was gossiping about? Who you was And she kept drilling me. She wanted more details. And my husband was eating that up. He was loving that. He looks back in the room like, mm-hmm. So I said that when I'm praying by myself, I'll go into detail in the future because I don't have time for that. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times that's what prevents us from opening up what other people are going to say, you know. So we can handle that though because we don't need to be praying no one time a day anyway. So I said I'll continue to, I don't have to go into detail for them to hear me and be questioning me and giving me the third degree, but I still need to hold myself accountable. So while I'm by myself uh, during the day and at night during my prayers alone with God, I'm going to go into detail with that stuff as I am striving to make sure um, that I don't feed into the flesh as I go throughout the day and not even have to deal with those things. But we're all human, right? So it comes up. Um, so anyway, all right, we gotta be real with ourselves, y'all. We're human, we all make mistakes and we want to change our ways. The problem is when you don't want to change or when you don't admit that you need to work on some things. But here at ACT UP, we keep it real. We keep it 100, like they say, to the best of our ability. I hope you enjoyed our episode today, and I'm asking you to remain encouraged and continue to focus on what God's will is for your life, who God says you are. All right. And don't worry about what anybody else says about you, anybody's opinions. They don't matter. They don't matter. Don't let that block your blessings that God has for your life. He's here. Even when we're struggling, when we're going through things, He's in the picture. He knows what we're going through, but He wants us to come to Him and to trust Him so that He can lay out that roadmap for us. All right. So until next time, y'all, continue to act up in a good way, that is. Stay above those crazy thoughts. And you're going to get through this and we're going to heal y'all. And I hope you have a great rest of your day and evening. See y'all later. Bye bye.